And the word random has different meanings for different people. But let's give you two examples of how you might want to use this particular capability. We're talking about two functions here. The first one is RAND equal RAND. And its purpose, simply in an isolated case, is to create a random number between 0 and 1. I'm just going to put it out here in the middle of nowhere for the moment, equal RAND. It's one of these functions that has parentheses, but nothing between the parentheses. Just type it like that, enter. And depending on how many decimals you've got displayed here, it's a random number between 0 and 1. And so that's not really giving us much rationale for using it. Now, here's a list of data. It's a database. It currently looks like it's sorted by department. There are times when you've got a list. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be an HR list like this might be. It could be a list of items. It could be a list of sales. Sometimes what you want to do is sort of a primitive version of quality control. You simply want to pull out some of these rows at random to review them to see if the information's been processed, and it could be almost any kind of data. So how might you randomize this list? Well, we've got an empty column to the right here. Simply put in equal RAND here. Left parenthesis, enter there, and you probably want to display at least something, although that's not wrong there, so we could show a few decimals just to see what it is. Double click to copy this down the column, and use this as a vehicle for sorting the data. And to make it fall into place pretty quickly, give it a temporary title, practically anything, just QQ or whatever. That's okay. By the way, you may have noticed there, the numbers all changed. This is one of those functions that adjust every time you make a worksheet change. Now, I could click over here and type in a number and hit enter, and they all change again. We're not going to let that bother us, just leave this here. But if we use this as our sorting vehicle, and the fastest way to do this, since it is adjacent to all this data, and it's not associated with the data to the right, this is an empty column, we could simply click the Data tab, hit the AZ or ZA button, and it sorts the entire list. And now, as you look at this list, it is in no apparent order whatsoever. And in fact, the numbers that it was based on that were here got all changed again. And anytime you make a worksheet change, these change. Now, we don't care about these numbers anymore. This list is in random order. And so we could throw away the numbers, and maybe if we needed to do a spot check of 10 of these, we'll just pick the first 10 and go at it, review those, and no others. Another approach to this could be something a little bit different. We might just type in an entry here, equal RAND, left parenthesis. If, for example, we wanted to do 10% of these, how about equal RAND less than 10%? Type that. I'm going to get a true false. Double click to copy this down the column. And 10% of these are true, roughly. The others are false. So we could just freeze those if we wanted to and then sort that way. That's a little more obscure and probably not as likely to be used, but again, another use of it. So eventually, or at least if all these are in random order, you'll decide what to do with them. But eventually you would get rid of this column. A companion function to this, which I find useful because I prepare a lot of sample data. And I'm forever adjusting it. In a real business-like environment, probably not going to use it in the way that I might use it here, but for purposes of a certain example, I need some random numbers in here. And not numbers between 0 and 1, but numbers that are relevant to the context in question. And so I'm tabulating. It might be sales, it might be well ratings, it could be anything. But the values here typically are between, for example, 100 and 700. So here's a function called RANDBETWEEN. So RANDBETWEEN, and this deals with whole numbers. RANDBETWEEN, a lower value first, a higher value next. And since these are all highlighted ahead of time, I'll just hit Control Enter. And we'll adjust the formatting kind of quickly on the Home tab here. Just hit comma and don't show those decimals. There we go. We got some whole numbers. And they too will change every time you make a worksheet change. Here and there with smaller sets of data, I've had situations where I didn't like the numbers, and so you can quickly regenerate them. I doubt if you'd need that here just by hitting F9. It'll do a recalculation and they all change. Some people could figure out a way to pick their lotto numbers maybe and don't like them, they'll change them. But if you did want these to freeze at some point, you can simply with the right mouse button drag these into another set of cells and immediately right back on top of the current ones. Like when copy here is values only. So Here and there, creating quick random data for samples, that's easy, RAND between. And if you want to have a series of dates here for the same idea, between those two dates, that's 2010 and 2011, that's 2 years of data there. Here we do simply equal RAND between a starting date, comma, an ending date, and we do want these to be absolute here, so when hit F4, we've got a bunch of random dates, and for the moment, those two will change, and so if you want to freeze them, the same idea. There are obviously some uses here, well beyond the mathematical concept of a random number that might have some value as you work with data, and either need to sort data in a random way or possibly create some sample data quickly.